Today is Thursday, August 12th, 2021. My name is Alex Fisher, and this is a Veteran Voices Project interview with Sgt Gonzalez, United States Marine Corps. How are you doing today, Sgt Gonzalez?
Great. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate you taking the time to do the interview.
No, thank you. Thank you for your time and your service. Are you a New York native?
Yes. Yep. Born and raised in Stonybrook. What
brings you to the city?
I'd always wanted to go to school there, but it wasn't until after the military with the GI Bill that I could afford it. So school, really. After the Marine Corps, I went to Fordham University, their Manhattan campus, for English creative writing, and that's where I found my community. So right now I commute, but hopefully, and with COVID, I haven't been working in the city as often, but hopefully post-COVID, I'll be able to get a full-time job and relocate, so the commute will be shorter.
What made you join the military? How did that go about? Like, what persuaded you, what motivated you to go out and join the military?
I mean, it wasn't a bad move because my family was poor and I knew that I wouldn't be able to afford loans for college. I knew that growing up in Stonybrook, it was a really culturally diverse area for sure, but there was a lot of education. Everyone was specialized. All my friends' parents were lawyers or doctors or professors or hedge fund dudes that commuted in. So there's just so much education and professional expertise that nobody in my family had. My dad was a cop, and my mom ended up being a laborer for the town. But growing up, we were very poor, and it just seemed like a good way to create a better future. But realistically, the military, and specifically the GI Bill, is the biggest contributor to social mobility in America today. For me, it was very practical. And then, of course, I joined with my now husband, who we were high school sweethearts at the time, and he joined for the other, stereotypical reason. He was a young man, also no prospects, didn't know what he was doing with his life, didn't have a sense of self or purpose, and the Marine Corps probably shaped him up better than it did me. But for both of us, it really, literally the same reasons as everyone else, right?
Hey, thank you for your service. Thank you for his service. I'm also a dual spouse military. So
hell yeah.
Thank you guys.
That's where it's at.
it really is. People don't understand, but that's where it's at. So if you know, you know
your spouse is going to have your back. Yeah, that's it. If you know, you know.
But how did your parents react when you joined? You said your dad was a cop, and your mom was a laborer. How did they react when you came home and hey, I'm going to the Marine Corps?
To be perfectly honest, my dad was pretty abusive. So I don't think he was proud because he saw it as an affirmation of him being a good father. But ironically, a lot of people join the military, especially the Marine Corps, because they have something to prove, or they're fleeing toxic family situations. They're fleeing poverty or, unsafe circumstances, narcissism, abuse, neglect, sexual assault. I met so many people like that. And for me, it was definitely, his reaction was not, I don't even remember it, to be honest, because it wasn't something I particularly cared about. My mother, who was always very unconditionally, loving, I just remember her crying and being so scared, because every civilian, and me too, and my husband too as a civilian, both of our mothers, were so worried that we'd go off and get killed. And, again, I'm sure we'll get into this, but it's just, as a civilian, you don't know any better, and you think I'm going to die in war, but really it's, suicide, car crashes, drunk driving, training accidents.
My parents reacted the same way. It was just, I came home and was hey, I joined the military. What? My mom is from Ukraine, so, she has that old mentality of the old motherland.
Yeah.
She's oh, you're going
and that's
to war.
A huge thing.
You're dead.
That's, yeah. Oh my God, for sure. With the backdrop of the history, the culture of the Soviet Union, hanging over, and the East, that I'm sure she had that experience. And then it's interesting. So she's first generation. She's first generation American.
No, I'm first generation. Well, my
so
kids are first generation American. Yeah, we immigrated over here, so it was.
That's amazing.
Something.
And that's really special too, because my father's from Argentina. He came here illegally, so there's such a history of of immigrants and first generation Americans serving proudly in the military. That's a really special legacy too. But a lot of immigrants, you know, they really are. They're proud to be here. I know in our boot camp platoon we had the first female Iraqi national in our platoon. She was our guide. She worked as a translator in Iraq with American troops, with Marine troops, who one of the Marines became her husband, and she came back to become a Marine as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah.
I've seen a bunch like stories like that. Like we've had our translators that when I was deployed with,
Yeah.
they came to the States after we got back a couple of years later. They started working contracting
Yeah,
here and
yeah,
some joined. So
yeah, so I was an Arabic linguist. That was my MOS, and I'm sure that's a question that we're going to get to. But I've also seen tons of like Cat 3 linguists and tons of like different civilian contractors. But it's definitely something unique when those contractors want to come and be the Marines too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get to that question. How did you choose to be a linguist? Out of everything that the military offers, so specific. Why that?
Yeah, because I'm such a snowflake. I like walked into my recruiter's office and I was like, I want to be a linguist, and he's like, you have to be smart for that, and I was like, oh, it's a good thing I'm smart. And he's like, no, you got to take a D-Lab, and you know, and in addition to the ASVAB, and I got like a 96 or something on my ASVAB. I don't really remember, but I just remember he was impressed, and I was like, well, I'm dumb. I missed 3 questions. But then, you know, like they always joke about the average score of Marines is like 30 or 40. It's just like really, really low. And so like I've always been good at academics. I've always been intellectual. Oh, and actually, so you hear all this noise in the background. I know you asked about job, but I'll just take this moment to caveat and say that I'm actually on Paris Island right now because my brother is graduating tomorrow. So it's really funny. I've just been like having throwbacks all day because, you know, I haven't been here since I graduated like 7 years ago.
Well, congratulations to him. That's awesome.
Yeah, he made it. Really proud of him. But yeah, really interesting setting to be having this interview. But yeah, I've always loved culture, languages. It probably stemmed from, again, my father being an Argentine or Argentinian immigrant, and my mother being like very white and waspy, like, you know, British, Irish, Germanic like heritage. So like I always had a sense that there was some culturally like ethnic space to me, but like I only knew that space through trauma because my father was very abusive. So I've always just been like hardwired to be interested in other cultures because there was all this culture that was kind of my birthright that kind of was denied to me through, you know, just not even denied to me, just have a weird relationship with me being Latina, like what that means. Like I don't speak Spanish, but then, you know, like I grew up with my father and stepmother speaking Spanish and eating Spanish food. So like for me, culture, language, just instant draw. I did an exchange year to Japan with Rotary Youth Exchange between high school and my community college, a gap year. So I lived in Japan for a year. I definitely like love culture. And then when I graduated Suffolk Community College, I just figured when I joined, you know, that was it. I graduated. I didn't have a job, right? Like 4.0 GPA, honors, you know, like excellent marks, really inquisitive, but I had no prospect, didn't know what to do. So my husband, then boyfriend, joined the Marine Corps, and I was like, I want to be a linguist. The military is going to pay me to learn a language and be culturally sensitive. I'm going to get a top secret clearance. That's the intelligence community that has great crossover value in the civilian world. So I'm very much a strategist. I definitely went in there with like, this is what, and I remember my recruiter, he said, you know, this is just you know, your request. If you don't get that, you're going to be proud to be a Marine. And I just like looked at him and I was like, no, I want to serve my country in the way I am most like have the highest aptitude to as a linguist. And that's like non-negotiable. Like it, you know, like it's because he's like, you know, you're here because you want to be a Marine. And I was like, no, I'm here because my husband needs to be a Marine. I could go to the Army. I mean, that's not true. The Army would literally be my last choice. No offense, Alex. I hope are you Army?
I am Army, but hey,
I need to apologize. I've met amazing Army people. The culture just isn't my favorite.
I don't blame you. Look, I went into the recruiting station and there was like 4 recruiters in there, and they were like, I want to join the Navy because I don't know why.
You know what?
Everybody's first thing is the Navy.
I just consider Army Gen Pop. Like, there's nothing wrong with them. They're just normal, and I've never been like normal. Like the Navy's super. The Marines have like this super like chip on their shoulder, like they're just jocks, and then like the Air Force is all smart. Like the Army is literally just your quintessential like all American person that like is solid, and I've just never been that. Anyone that if it's more than a superficial kind of joke, anyone that takes that stuff seriously is missing the point. That sort of like competitiveness between branches.
Oh no, of course. Listen, we all know that Marines are out of crayons, so we get it.
We really are. It's funny. Someone said, "Melanie, you're really smart," and I go, "Yeah, but the smartest Marine is still fucking retarded." And for anyone listening, that like completely like politically correct phrasing is like very in keeping with Marine culture. Absolutely inappropriate, but perfectly apt for this interview. There's a lot of civilians that don't understand the culture that are really interested in advocacy, and that's pretty cool. Like I can't. There's so many amazing things civilians have talked to me about since I've become a veteran that when I share, like I remember telling one person, I feel one of my coworkers who's this dude he's just a great dude. His name's Brad, and he's wonderful. And I remember saying something like, yeah, when I hear people say thank you for your service, I get very uncomfortable. It's not even imposter syndrome. It's like it triggers like a dissonance in me, like the same way trans people are dysphoric. Sometimes like I hear thank you for your service, and all I think about in response is the ways I didn't serve, the ways people that did step up to serve were commodified. And it's like a very, because I'm an artist, I'm a creative, like everything I think about is very deep and layered. And it's probably because I'm like, what is it? I'm neurodiverse, like I have the ADHD, and like, I just don't, I'm just always thinking, but like, he's so kind. When I told him that, he didn't ask, he wasn't like, that's weird. He goes, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't even know that was possible. What should I say? And just the fact that he asked that question with genuine sincerity, like just filled my heart with joy. It was like so beautiful. The answer, of course, is you don't have to not say anything, because I'm like the one out of a million Marines that would get like triggered by that. Like, right. I told you at the beginning, I'm a snowflake, right? I wanted to be treated special. So I went to Intel and like, became a linguist, and people told me from day one, they're going to treat you different than they treat normal Marines. And it's true. It's true. After training, like Fleet Marine Corps, nobody really screamed. Like I got literally 20% of the screaming all the other Marines got in the Marine Corps. Like just, I had a working relationship with my superiors, my peers, and my subordinates based off mutual respect. That is not something that really exists in the Marine Corps. That's not something they really breed into. They try, but it just doesn't take root. It's something left to, the individual figure out. And it's something that thankfully is really abundant in the intelligence field: critical thinking, mutual respect, giving people the benefit of the doubt, letting junior Marines like argue their points against superiors, all that stuff. So I guess the original question was just why linguist, I think. And it's just, wait, what was the original question?
Why linguist? But it's okay. It's all right.
Yeah. Everything's pretty interconnected. The original question is, why linguist? Because I love culture, probably rooted in trauma. It makes me really happy. I think learning new cultures is how we share our humanity. And even now, like the most current event, I'm reading news headlines all day about Afghanistan and how the Taliban is like dragging women out of their houses, children out of their houses to use as sex slaves, right? And it's like we knew that was going to happen. Any individual soldier, sailor, Marine, airman, Space Force, Guardian, Coastie, right? We all knew that chaos would ensue if you pull out. And it's like the shared cultural understanding, the idea that our Afghani brothers and sisters are deserving of respect and protection as much as we are. And it's a tough decision. And like, I feel personally wounded that this is happening to them. It's a betrayal of them. It's also a betrayal of everything we've trained for. Felt the same way when the Peshmerga, Trump fucked over the Peshmerga last year. These things gut us because they train us. And at least, I don't know about you and Army, but like Marine propaganda, they really the propaganda is strong. They put it in your head that you're like humanity's fucking savior and that you're stepping up to do something noble. And there's nothing wrong with that message, but policy makers do not help you achieve that, right? Like, that's the message they want you to feel. And then it's like, oh, but your sister in arms and coworker got raped by a superior and we're sweeping it under the rug and she's going to get retaliated against if she says anything. But, noble profession. So it's a lot of bittersweetness around the whole experience. Yeah.
So you're in Paris Island right now.
Yeah.
You said you're back to the stepping grounds. So, how's it changed?
Yeah.
Like, what do you remember?
No,
Your first.
it's exactly the same. It's nothing. This place has never, like, this place has minimal changes because it's not designed to change or update. And the Marine Corps as a whole, like, we always use like the most like faulty, oldest equipment. All of our bases are bases other service members didn't want. Like, they're all like in like disarray and dilapidated, like mold in the barracks, poison water, like everything the Marine Corps uses is out of date. It's not, Marines have never trained with, it's not about what you're training with, it's about the mentality you foster when you're training, which is honestly, if you look at Marine Corps recruit training, it's actually very easy. It's designed to take the like most inept person and build them up to some standard. And the truth is, all the Marines I met who were bodybuilders before boot camp said that boot camp hurt them. They went down in body mass. They could not keep up their pre-Marine Corps routine. So it's not really about what you accomplish here or what you're training with. It's about the mindset. And in that regard, it's very it's probably just as uncomfortable now that I'm back as it was when I was here. I was very self-aware when I was here the first time that this was a tool of indoctrination, that this is something meant to build you up, and you generally only need to be built up if you don't have a strong and confident sense of self. And this all goes back to the I'm a snowflake thing. I've always had a stronger sense of self than the Marine Corps, than the one the Marine Corps instilled in me. It just made me my better self. Whereas like with my husband, with my brother, both my brothers who joined, right, the Marine Corps really strips things away from people and creates a like kind of a whole new foundation for who they are. And for me, it was just to a much, much smaller degree than with other people I'd met. But it's the same, like people screaming at each other, like playing fuck games, harassing recruits, like drill instructors being extra, a lot of like families showing up in like really cringy moto gear, pride gear, like good stuff, just, nothing, not my speed, nothing's changed. I forgot how beautiful the island is.
with all that, what's your one memory of basic?
I repressed
like the one that stands out the most. But you're there now. They have to be coming back.
You know what came back is actually when my brother was talking about the night walk. So I didn't know this, but they said that my mom said that she heard a fact on like the thing that they walk the last like cumulative weekend of basic for the Marine Corps. They walk 40 miles all together, excluding this like 9 to get there and the 6 back. I had no idea we walked that far, but I remember, because I'm 5'2", so I'm very short, I remember thinking we like covered so much ground, and I was like, this is insane. And one thing I remembered was on the night hike, I have bad vision and I couldn't see anything in front of me. And it was very much an act of faith because you're walking at high speed through the woods in the middle of the night. And the only people that have the lights are the drill instructors on the side and the people in the very front. And we're like, 100 people back from the front or whatever. So you're just walking like very quickly through the pitch black. And I just remember I was so unsure of myself, and I was like, I'm gonna fall and trip. I need clarity. I like need to be able to see. I don't know what I'm doing. And there was another girl that felt the same way, and we were both so scared. And I just remember we did the whole thing holding hands, and like it was just very intimate because you have no idea what's happening. It's like very simulated, like chaos, fog of war, and people like fell and twisted their ankles. And I just remember holding her hand. When she would stumble, I would catch her, and when I would stumble, she would catch me. And I just remember like we made it through literally in the dark, just kind of off people telling us to go do something we couldn't even see by like literally leaning on each other. But I don't even remember her name. And it's just like it was just such a weird thing I had thought about recently, just today, just how like intimate and important these like passing moments can be, that the way they form so organically in the military, but then, they're ephemeral things, right? Like who knows if she's still in or if she got out? Who knows if she had a really successful career as supermoto or if she had a really bad run of it and ended up, killing herself? Like I have no idea. Like anything could be possible. And all I remember about her was that really wonderful moment. Can't even remember her name, but I remember the comfort I felt holding her hand.
Well, look, you're in Paris Island. You could, there's so many name teams around. Someone's bound to have the same last name.
I want to say Diaz. I remember her smile and her hair. I remember her face. But I don't know if that was. So, yeah.
Let me get back.
Yeah, I don't know if you hear that beeping. It's like black flag weather, and I'm just sitting here in the shade, like just. Oh man. Yeah, I don't know. I remember how I just remember how indoctrinated everyone was, which is fine. Like, they have a job to do, they read the scripts, right? They make you believe it. Like, I just remember how, like, everything had a purpose and a place, and, like, I always was thinking about it in a very meta way, right? Like, which isn't, like, I don't know, I feel like most people, they tend to react emotionally. Like, I was nervous. I think that's what I felt most of all. Nervous I would mess it up, but that's probably, I don't know. That's probably, huh?
I understand.
There was
It
a girl
happens.
that got into Harvard that said she came to basic rather than Harvard because she wanted to be a Marine, and she ended up getting dropped permanently for failure to adjust because she couldn't keep her bearing. And I said, is it a nervous tick? And she goes, no, I just can't take them seriously. And I go, yeah, but like, why would you jeopardize your career as a Marine, your future as a Marine, when you claim it's all you want, just because in the moment you have to, like, get the last laugh by, you know, smirking, right? Like, why would you, right? Like,
No, I
it's
understand. Okay,
yeah, it's an all or nothing relationship. Like, you either get it done and you do it. There's no like, oh, I almost was a Marine. Like, well, did you finish Paris Island and graduate or not?
it's like I almost joined the military. Same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so you get out of basic. You're out of basic now, and now you're going to linguist school. How was that?
Mhm.
Was it as what you thought it would be after the D-Lab? Because I took the
Yes,
D-Lab, and that's just
yes,
an
yes,
imaginary
yes, yes.
language, as I recall.
It was the magic promised land that all the Marines told me it would be. All of them said I'd be special. We'd all be special, and it's true. And that's what our instructors explained to us. We, like, you have your top secret clearance that you get later, but you know, they do that investigation. People are like, you treat each other with mutual respect. The instructors, you get to go talk to them. We were in training. We were able to go off base by ourselves without battle buddies because they deemed us as a MOS mature enough. The company, the battalion commander deemed us as an MOS mature enough as young adults to go be on our own. How many Marines get that? How many veterans, like, not veterans, how many active duty service members get that trust, right? Like, the fact that you can hold, like, we had people that had come out of Princeton, people that had literally graduated Ivy Leagues that were there. We had people that were just like really, really smart. And, you know, it's one of the longest training schools in the DOD. It's one of the most difficult intellectually. Like, physically, obviously, like dive school or, you know, like whatever, sniper school, recon school, infantry, all that stuff. But intellectually, you will not get a harder school than probably the Defense Language Institute, because you're learning another language in 6 months to like 64 weeks or whatever. Arabic was 64 weeks. Arabic, Levantine Arabic. So that's what I learned. They have modern standard Arabic. They have Spanish and Pashto and Farsi, Russian, Korean. They have all these languages, and you're taught language like 8 hours a day by, you know, in groups of, like, for my schoolhouse, it was groups of like 5 to 6. We had a class of 18, but we had 3 separate subclasses that, you know, so you're in a group of 5 people with one teacher that, you know, rotates. You have a teaching team of 6 different professors, you know, from different areas. So you're getting the accent from like first generation American immigrants, right? From, or, you know, Americans. It was a lot though, right? So they call it a water hose of information. And it has just like one of the highest attrition rates for any MOS school in the Marine Corps. I think only like 40% of people make it. The only thing I can even think is remotely comparable is probably JCAC, which is a cyber intelligence, like computer hacking course that they give to the analysts in Intel. So those would be like our colleagues that they sometimes have the opportunity to do that, but that's not, usually that is for like second enlistment. They just, I don't even know if it's still open to beginning Marines, but they had just opened that one up.
So did you pick Arabic, or was it assigned to you depending on test scores?
They asked what I wanted. I told them Korean because Korean and Japanese have very similar linguistic structures and grammar. And I was like, I'm already, you know, I already know a little of Japanese from my exchange year where I went to high school there. So I would be grammatically ahead to set up Korean. I knew a lot about Asian culture as far as like the difference between collective society, like the mask thing, right? Like Asian culture, you see Korea, Japan, like Japan doesn't, they're not doing vaccinations yet. They're just not, because they're not going to use a vaccine that they haven't developed themselves. But even so, Japan has a massively low rate of COVID because everyone wears their fucking masks. People wear masks in Asia just to be polite, because if you're sick, you don't want to get others sick. I remember having the culture shock when I lived there the first time, going on the subway and seeing all these people in surgical masks, and I was like, is everyone a doctor? Like, no, it's just a cultural thing. So, I mean, there's just like, I felt culturally prepped to do, and that's what I said. I was like, give me Korean, give me any sort of Chinese, like give me any sort of Asian language, just because that's what I was like mentally prepped for from my earlier life experience. And I was like, and if you're going to give me something else, give me a dialect, because modern standard Arabic is kind of like the Quranic Arabic that they use. And it's what they teach in schools, but it's basically if you wanted to learn English and then you only read Shakespeare. It's technically English, but like it's not, right? And nobody talks like that. So I didn't want that one. So I went out of my way to say, give me Levantine. And then they just heard that I knew the weird dialect they were teaching. So they were like, oh, she knows what Levantine is? Let's give it to her. And I was like, fuck. And I passed. I passed with the like lowest passing score you can get to pass, a 2.2, which I was so proud of because I felt like I was drowning every day. I never felt like I knew what was going on. And I studied Arabic pretty much out of my 5-year enlistment for like 4 years before I even felt remotely comfortable, which is crazy.
Now, did you deploy and have to use it, or did you?
I almost deployed to Syria. I was a replacement hot fill for a linguist that failed their yearly certification for their language, but the company, whatever, the officer that was like the commander of the like unit that got attached, right, the individual augments that got attached from radio battalion, they were attached to the deploying like artillery company. And the thing is, he didn't want to approve it. So technically, even though the radio battalion said that I would be the one to go, he just never like certified it. And I didn't know what to do, right? Because imagine you're like an artillery commander and you have 300 Marines about to deploy like a week from now. And could you imagine getting a request mass from a woman saying, a female Marine saying, hey, this is an old boys club and this officer, basically fucked me over. Because when I asked him why I wasn't going when I was told I was going, this like junior officer, this pathetic man couldn't even look me in the eye. And the thing is, he said, oh, because your training's not up. And that was a lie. All my training was there. What he meant to say, and if he said it looking me in the eye with, again, mutual fucking respect, something a lot of people don't understand. If he just said, hey, yeah, you are more qualified, but, I'm going to make the executive decision here that unit cohesion and, the trust we built over training is more important in a war zone, right, than, technical proficiency, and I appreciate you being there as a backup, whatever. Like, that's an answer I would have taken like, wow, he's treating me with mutual respect, and like, that's just tough luck. But it wasn't that. He couldn't look me in the eye and he made up a lie because like, that's the fucking quality of our officers? Like, that's what we got? So I was just very disgusted, very much like, great, so now I'm the adult in the room because but I couldn't bring myself to request mass because on one hand, it's like he really is playing fuck games. Like, I don't think it was sexism, but it just felt like a slap in the face. You have a bunch of guys acting like frat boys about going over to a war zone, and like this proficient female shows up and the officer can't even fucking look me in the eye. It felt like I felt like if I was a dude who he was chill with, he would have just been like, yeah, you're coming in. Sorry, dude, you're out. Like, so I don't know what it was, but I thought about requesting mass, and I just thought I couldn't do that because I'd be putting my selfishness of like wanting to deploy to a combat zone above like the commander's time, and the commander probably, like the battalion commander probably needed all that time to do last minute checks for his Marines that were going into a combat zone. Like, two things would have happened. I would have requested mass, and either he would have said, I see what you're saying, that's really unprofessional, you're going to come with us, and like, I'm sorry that happened to you, or he was going to say, are you fucking kidding me? I'm taking 300 Marines to fucking Syria, and this is what you're fucking wasting my time with. And I just wasn't like emotionally willing to gamble to get him like basically telling me my fucking concerns about professionalism were irrelevant. So I just didn't go for it. And in response, my fucking bosses, because they saw how I got fucked over, they let me pick whether I wanted to go on a MEU or go deploy to Spain. So I picked Spain because I hate boats.
I mean, that's a good reason. I'll take that. So where were you stationed after basically? Where was this before you went to Spain? And so in between Paris Island and
intelligence training is San Angelo. So Defense Language Institute is Monterey, California, Monterey Bay, like right next to Big Sur. It's, a vacation spot, nicest place you'll ever be stationed in the military ever. And then after that, San Angelo, the high desert in Texas, middle of nowhere, terrible place, really boring. And then, I mean, I could just be a little biased being from New York, but, and then Lejeune is where I landed. Lejeune and my husband landed at Cherry Point. So we lived in Swansboro and commuted.
So yeah, so with that statement, but then I'm from New York, you know, how was it different? Like, could you tell the difference from where you were from New York, you know, and then others that are like from South Dakota?
You know what? I wonder how South Dakota is, because I'll tell you this, like, before I joined the military, I definitely lived in like an elitist liberal bubble. I didn't think I needed to leave New York. I didn't think, you know, anything was worth leaving for. But, you know, joining the military, you get to see all these geographically gorgeous places, the variation, the scope of the American experience, both in like people you meet and in places you visit. And all that stuff, you know, all those collective experiences were absolutely invaluable, but I just get creeped out by like the Carolinas. I just don't like, this is personal preference. I've met many a good, amazing, good old boy who's like the salt of the earth, right? Like just a dude that everything works their way and like they're good at everything and everyone likes them and they're like, you know, fucking Captain America, blonde hair, blue eyes, like from the country, right? And like they're just the best salt of the earth people. They just will literally take like the shirt off their back to help you. But I've also just like, there's not like the stereotype of like people being assholes from the South and being like bigots does come from somewhere. There's also Southern hospitality, so it balances out. But like there was just so much casual like racism, homophobia, like dismissal of like any issue that was deemed like too snowflakey, right? And like I didn't appreciate that. I didn't go to church when I was in South Carolina North Carolina, Lejeune, because I couldn't find a progressive Episcopalian church. When I was in California, I went to church every weekend. The Episcopalian church is a church that accepts LGBTQ members. Like they don't believe it's a sin. They changed their canon law. That is my church. They did not have an Episcopalian church in my area, probably because people wouldn't go to it because, you know, there's a certain cultural connotation. I had the wife of retired chaplain, right? A woman who herself was deeply religious, making offhanded comments. So like, I just don't like North Carolina. I don't like the South generally. I don't like cultural elements of the South. I don't like country music. I don't like pickup trucks. I don't like hunting. Like, I don't like pretty much the South. But I understand that that's just a generalization and that there are still like tons of amazing people there. But for me, like, no, absolutely. The only thing good about it is cost of living. And that has nothing to do with like that being a cultural thing. That has to do with just like there being no industry or economy to prop things up. Sorry, you know what, that came off so much more critical than I wanted it to, but
I mean it is what it is. Everyone's, you know, I mean I like sweet tea from the South. You know, they don't make.
Oh, that, you know, that's probably it. I've had people jokingly call me a communist because I drink my tea without sugar. And I do tea instead of coffee.
What, my favorite tea is from New York City, from the Chinese spots when they bring it to you in that little quart gallon.
Oh,
you know, the iced tea.
Yeah.
You know, to me, that's the best one. You can't get that anywhere in the country. Like, you know, I always try, and they're always like, no. Like right now, I live in Houston, and you can't find that anywhere.
You want nice Asian tea? Try to get a variation of barley tea or toasted rice tea. Toasted rice is not quite as good, but it has that like unique weird tea flavor that's like really excellent. Barley tea. It sounds crazy. So you're gonna find out like an Asian supply store or something.
I go there all the time. So
trust me.
I'll definitely take a look at that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So now, how was Spain? How was your time in Spain?
I don't really want to talk about it, mainly because I went 4 out of 5 years with like empowering command, with people treating me with mutual respect, and Spain was the 6 months in which we had a literally racist, homophobic, sexist, like dumbass good old boy from the South, like in charge of us as like our head for deployment for our you know, staff NCO. And he just was like, he bullied me so hard for no reason, despite my like, you know, the gray rock theory where like, if you don't engage people, they're like narcissists, they're supposed to go away. I grade rocked him so hard with professionalism. I wasn't snarky, I wasn't catty. When he was weird, I would just be like, oh, all right, great gunnery sergeant. I just knew professionalism will save you in those situations every time. Yeah, 6 months and he didn't let up, and I filed, and it wasn't just me. It was we had 18 people in our unit, and pretty much everyone except our commanding officer, who didn't know any better because we didn't tell him because we didn't want to like upset dad, right? Like the mom-dad relationship, like officer in charge, like staff, NCO, IC in charge. Yeah, that one, like we didn't want to upset our officer by telling him like his partner was like a fucking psychopath. So it was just like probably the worst Marine Corps experience. Really touching. I made a lot of new friends. But you know, it was just like a crash course in bad management, no empathy, like no no intellectual reasoning capability. Like I'll just put it this way. The very first time I met this guy, I was doing a hot fill for the Spain deployment because their head analyst like pieced out. And basically the very second time I met this gunny, which was at the airport to go over, so I didn't really know him. There was no workup I had. He asked me, he goes, "What do you think of the Kaepernick situation?" I'm like, "Oh shit. I'm a leftist, right? Like, but politics has no place when you're talking to like professional coworkers, especially those you don't know yet." So I was like, "Oh, this fucking guy," and I could tell he was like a good old boy, super conservative. So I was like, "Oh, I don't know any information to make a judgment on the scenario." So I couldn't say, you know, like I thought that was a fair statement. Nope. Sure enough, like 24 hours later, like we're in the shuttle going from like the barracks in Spain to like our place for the first time. And as we're getting dropped off, I forget the comments that led up to it, but whatever happened, he looked at me and he goes, "I knew you would be a shitty SIGINT analyst the second I found out you were liberal." And the thing is, I never said I was liberal or leftist, and I don't know what a political affiliation has to do with your job. So, like, it was just, Spain was very much probably the worst part of my Marine Corps experience. There was a lot of fun, you know, like, made a lot of friends. The chaplain was also a good old boy, and when I went to him and said, "I don't know how to deal with this," he made a lot of excuses for this gunny, and I had to change my personality to present as like the correct archetype of Christian woman in order to get the chaplain to take me seriously, which was incredibly upsetting, to have to change your fundamental presentation to get the mutual respect necessary to like have a conversation. It was tough, but you know, after the EO complaint wrapped up, dude got an adverse fit rep, which they don't award for no reason, right? They did an official investigation. They fucking interviewed everyone. And I mean, again, hopefully he will not promote. He wasn't leadership material. This isn't really a shit talk. Like, I'm not trying to make this interview like shit talking, but like this just points to the systemic issues in the Marine Corps. There is no way to actually affect people that end up in positions of authority that cannot handle taking care of Marines. There's too many people, and probably in the Army too, there's too many people in the military that get rank, get cushy, and can sacrifice the mental, emotional well-being of the people under them, the physical well-being of the people under them, the mission, like efficiency, just by being their asshole selves, and there's no correction for that because the people in charge like them.
I mean, that's common throughout every branch. I'm certain of that.
I mean, it is, It is common throughout every branch, but the big issue, right? And people even say, well, that's common in the civilian world. Yeah, asshole. If you're a fucking accountant and your boss, who's a CPA, is an asshole, you can shop around for other fucking accounting places, right? You can leave as soon as you want. You have money saved up, you can leave. You make a choice you have the choice every day you wake up to do something about it. In the military, it's like an abusive marriage. It's like someone saying, "Hey, Alex, let's get married for 5 years. I promise I'll be a great wife. I promise I'll take care of you. And in 5 years, you can choose to marry me again, or to stay married, or you can choose to file for divorce," right? And if you decide to walk away, you don't get any of your benefits, right? Like if you leave before 2 years or something, you don't get your education benefits. If you leave a certain way, they basically, the way you exit determines your benefits. So if you're trying to lift yourself out of poverty and you go into the military thinking you're going to have like the all-American experience, and you're a female Marine and you get raped, or a male Marine, because they're underreported, right? You get raped by a superior and you have the worst emotional fucking and physical time of your experience in the Marine Corps. You break an ankle, right, because your boss was like bullying you to like PT harder, you know, train like you fight, right? You have like just a terrible experience, and you're getting hazed, you're getting bullied, you're getting commodified, or, you know, just treated like shit. You can't leave and know for a fact that the things you sacrificed for, you will retain. So for me, it's very much a flip of the coin. You marry someone and you don't know if they're going to be an abusive spouse. I had a great experience, right? My first 4 years, but I also have friends, as you do, as pretty much every fucking veteran does, that have committed suicide. It's an epidemic. Like, there's a reason for that. It's because the culture just allows people to have power over other people's lives. It's really, it can be very scary. It's just, again, it's like the most bittersweet thing I've done. It's everything good in my life I have because of the military. My education, my internship, like I got to intern as a writer's intern for the writer's room and for CBS Blue Bloods. Like, that was the best experience. Part of my pitch to the showrunner was about my military experience. I'm working for Viacom CBS's Veterans Network. I got into a Writers Guild Foundation veteran writing program. Again, like I want to be a writer. I want to be a TV show writer. I want to tell stories and help, like, you know, speak with nuance and meaning and celebrate, you know, diversity. A lot of people don't know veterans aren't just like blockheads. Like, a lot of veterans are LGBTQ. A lot of veterans are skinny black nerds that want to play D&D. A lot of veterans are, you know, just big, adorable, sweet, like, country guys that are just fucking teddy bears, and you wouldn't know that if you didn't talk to them. Like, people don't understand that veterans are not all Chris Evans and we don't all look like fucking Captain America, right? We're not all swole. Like, there's just so much to correct and so much to do, and I feel like that's what the beauty of this project is, right? You're capturing different experiences. You're going to have people that have had, like, the worst time of their life, you know, confessing, like, the darkest period of their service on these interviews. You're going to have people that are so proud that had nothing but good things happen to them, that it was like they're just so motivated, right? And those people live worlds apart, but it's the same service. And that's the whole point, is that I wish people would reconcile more that there's both of those sides in service, and that sometimes they intermingle, right? I have a lot of service. I've never suffered any of those issues, and thankfully, because I was a little neurotic about, you know, being mindful of that stuff. But the amount of women and men I've met that have, you know, suffered these things, right? Like, just that could be fixed with oversight or fixed with compassion, fixed with good leadership, right? It's heartbreaking. I still think about it.
Yeah, no, listen, you're 100% correct. You know, there are definitely issues within the branches that need to be addressed, and they just never get addressed. They just keep getting, you know,
well, it's just the issue becomes the military branches often do not train critical thinkers. Maybe the Air Force does, but by and large, the military is a culture where it's okay to say, shut the fuck up, I'm your sergeant and I said so and that's why, right? And that is not a place that's going to offer productive, constructive critiquing, right? Constructive critiquing. Like, nobody's going to want to be made better if the person pointing it out is not their superior, right? There's too many yes men, and who's gonna believe who? Like, if you're my sergeant and I say you attacked me, right, and you say I was drunk and I'm making excuses, who do they want to believe? Like, it's a he versus she. But even if I'm right, like, the sergeant's going until retirement, I'm just a lance, I'll get out in 4 years, right? So everyone has every incentive to side with the sergeant, because the Marine Corps is a small place, and, you know, he's going until a full 20 and I'm getting out after 3 years. So why wouldn't they side with him, right? Like, or you know, just throwing your junior Marines under the bus because you're, like, it's just weird stuff. I don't know. Like, the Marine Corps it can't make you a leader. It can teach leadership and it can set the example, because there's so many fucking Marines that set the example. But a lot of people are gunnies and they still fall short. A lot of people are fucking officers and they fall disgustingly short, because the greater the responsibility, the higher the standards, right? Because they have absolute power, right? Like, it's my bar for, like, judging people is based on how much their fuck ups can hurt and affect the people under and around them. So Mustangs, salt of the earth. Absolutely. Like, everyone loves Mustangs. You have to love a Mustang. You can't not love, like, they just get the benefit of a doubt that they're going to be awesome from the beginning. Officer on my deployment, Mustang. Someone that has served, like, boots on the ground, like the lowest ranking, you know, position you can be, and then become the decision maker. You have to love those people. That's why you love warrant officers. Yeah, Mustangs, warrant officers, cool as fuck.
Yeah, you're right. So you got out, started using your GI Bill. Now, what did you major in? What are you majoring in?
So I went. I had a priest in community college in sociology talk about how Fordham was a great school. It's a Jesuit university, so it's Catholic. But they're very supportive of, you know, and it's basically secular. It's basically a secular school, and some of the professors are, like, really smart Jesuit priests with, like, PhDs. that's pretty much what Fordham is. But it is a Catholic school. Jesuits are the branch of the Catholic clergy that like they believe higher learning is like their God-given calling. So they very much encourage critical thinking. In fact, even of the Catholic doctrine, they they let you draw your own conclusions. But they give you all the source material to like do that with. They're very it's very rebellious, and I really related to that. In the Marine Corps, like the same thing, right? Like you can have an issue with the system, but the system's not going to change. So you have to find everyday ways of being good to the people around you and like making mission. And that's very much how I felt the people were there. Fordham gave me a free ride. They take care of their veterans. You can, if you're a veteran and listening to this, you can take your GI Bill and you can do Fordham Law School for free. Like they do not screw around. Columbia, NYU, a lot of other private schools in Manhattan will only do a certain amount for yellow ribbon aid. Fordham covers everything. I studied creative writing. I got involved in the Veterans Association, run by a Marine retiree who did 20 years in public relations. I studied English. I studied creative writing. That's where I got my internship for Blue Bloods, which has a production studio and a writer's room in Brooklyn. And I commuted in every day for about 3 months. It was during COVID, so it was a little weird. I almost got an internship for Art for the Armed Forces, Adam Driver's charity. I've never seen an Adam Driver movie, but like I love their mission of bringing theater and performance to veterans, and they usually bring non-veteran related narratives to veterans, which I love because we often get so pigeonholed, like where people are like, you're a veteran, so you obviously like, I don't know, dude, like if people treat me like a person before they treat me like a veteran or a Marine, I'll be happy. My husband and I just did our first vacation ever. We went to Salem, Massachusetts, and our tour guide was like, "Oh, you're a Marine?" And he was like trying to think of something to like scream at us, like a drill instructor. And I looked at him, I was like, "Sir, do you want this tip? Because if you play drill instructor, I'm literally not giving you this tip. If it's worth this much money to you." But like people's first instinct for veterans is to be like, oh, like, what's your trauma? Did you deploy? Right. And that just like, you wouldn't ask a cop if they've ever shot anyone. You wouldn't ask, a person of color, like, tell me about your traumatic experiences, like living in America. Right. Like, there's just certain things you just don't ask. So there's just certain things. So I don't know. For me, like being a veteran, it shaped it helped me oh my gosh, being a veteran has helped me so much. And at Fordham, it's like, I really saw that because it was the first time I could think about it. Like we're kids until we're 18. We're under our parents' control. From 19 to 20, I was, doing community college, but I still lived with my mom and worked like retail, right? That's not independent. And then I joined the Marine Corps and I was run by the government, right? And you have your sergeants are like your parents. You can't do what you can, what you can't do, right? Everything's ordered, and then you get into college and all of a sudden you get to pick your major and you get to pick your future and shape your destiny. And I wrote 3 novels when I was in the Marine Corps, but they weren't very good and I didn't understand why. Like learning creative writing, hearing people talk about industry standards from the big 5 publishing houses, learning from indie publishing house, like industry speakers, like doing seminars and classes and conferences on writing and screenwriting. Now I'm in the Writers Guild Foundation program, which, I was able to get into because of my spec script from my Blue Bloods internship. And I got, my internship with Viacom CBS Veterans Network, which is, they do great stuff for civilians and veterans in the space. Like I got that internship because of networking with my current boss, who's amazing. Betty, she's just wonderful. Like she's a civilian and her uncle is a Marine and her cousin is a wounded warrior, Army vet, and she just does nothing but work day and night to take care of veterans. So everything good I have in my life is because of the military, and college definitely got me there. College got me literally all my internships, my internship at a book publishing company, my internship with Blue Bloods, my internship with Viacom CBS, which sustained me remotely throughout COVID. I've been doing that for over a year now. College is, a GI Bill. Like it's the biggest tool for social mobility in America. I've had mentors, like I've talked one-on-one to mentors from Google, like that's Student Veterans of America contacts, like right there, like that's Student Veterans of America, right? Like who's going to school, like there's so many amazing organizations. that are there for veterans, which is why it's so scary, right? If like you're worried that like retaliating against your commander is going to get you kicked out, or like, you know, of the military, you're going to lose your GI Bill, right? Like, or saying someone in charge did something. I don't know. I feel like I've only had control of my life for the last 3 years. And in 3 years, I've gone from like being interested in writing to getting into like writing programs, working on like an actual really high rated TV show, and like having all these artists in my circle now, like these fellow writers. And it feels like just the realest family I've ever known. I don't think I've ever felt as seen as I do by these people now, and the Marine Corps helped me, gave me the tools to get there.
That's great. That is great. I'm definitely looking forward to when you get published to read your stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So keep me updated. You have my email.
Yeah.
So did you use up your GI Bill, or you still in school?
No, because I did 2 years. I did 2 years at community college, and then I did tuition assistance with the Marine Corps. So I did Fordham for 2 years, one course a semester for 2 years, even while I was deployed. So I had about a full semester out of the way. So I was entering Fordham with 2.5 years of school done. And in fact, when I got out of the military, I didn't have to apply to Fordham because I was already in Fordham doing online class through tuition assistance. So, and that wasn't any of my GI Bill. So, yeah, Fordham really hooked me up. They're a great school. They're just so lit. I mean, for me, my experience, I know they do some like weird sketch stuff with like, they're like weird about supporting people that have differing views from their own, but yeah, they're really, really good with veterans.
It is what it is, but yeah, listen, that's great, and it's good that you still have your benefits left over, because there was some drastic changes that just happened recently, so you have a lot more
but, you know,
to use now whenever you look forward to it.
I do want to state, like, for this interview record, if you finish your GI Bill and you finish in, like, cooking, right, and you're like, I don't want to be a cook, but I spend all my money on cooking school on my GI Bill, right, and you want to be an accountant, Voc Rehab, reach out, ask about it, figure it out, because they will, if you have a new career path and you feel like you have no way to get there, like Voc Rehab might be able to help.
Yeah, there's a lot of programs, you know, a lot of programs that veterans don't know about. So I'm currently using Voc Rehab.
Amazing.
I also used Vet Tech. I went to coding boot camp and I learned how to be a full stack developer. What I'm doing now is an internship with the Department of Veteran Services for my final semester in college to get a training and staff development certificate. So I had to do an internship, and luckily I got this one, so I get to talk to other veterans and, you know, work with veterans. I've always wanted to do it, so it's a great experience. But I completely agree with you that, you know, there's so many programs out there for veterans to use, and that they should use every single one that's afforded to them. The problem is not a lot of them do the research. A lot of them don't know, and that needs to change.
I would say if you don't know, because I didn't know either, like Veterans and Media Entertainment is a resource for any veteran that wants to go into like TV filmmaking or media entertainment. So like acting, directing, voiceover, editing, lighting, costume design, cinematography, filmography, videography, like UX design, like any creative enterprise, novel writing, literally any creative enterprises, veterans and media entertainment. I went to a writing conference and met a voice actor Marine, and we like bonded instantly, and we're still really good friends, and he's amazing. And he was like, yeah, you want to be a writer? Are you in VME? And I was like, what is that? And so it's like, just find other veterans who are interested in the same stuff. Ask your people, like do a Google, right? Like just keep asking. If you ask the first time and nobody answers, just keep asking. Ask it a million different people and you'll get an answer that helps you. I went to, oh my God, like Alex, I went to like 100 networking events. I felt so foreign in most of them, right? They're full of like old white men that like don't care about my opinion or like won't talk to me like an equal. And I swear to God, of like the 100 events I went to, I only got stuff out of like probably 5 of them. But those 5 of them changed the trajectory of my entire experience, right? Everything I have today. Go to all the events to find like your 5. And those other 95, that they weren't wastes of time. They were formative experiences. It is hard. It's grueling. But like when you get out, you can't like, that's the time to like work really hard. So now like I think my next move hopefully would be, with any luck, I think I want to apply to USC film and TV writing program.
I think that'd be great, and I think they'll be lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. But yeah, I want to uplift other storytellers, tell good stories, and start changing the cultural narrative. Like veteran stories. When do we ever get stories about like how being a veteran has changed people for the better? Like I love Barry. You can see how awesome he is because of being a veteran, and it kind of like touches on like the dark side, but it's not about that. That's all like peripheral. It's all about like him being a hitman and him trying to be an actor. The veteran thing, it's like it just is who he is, but it's not like a huge, it is a huge part of the story, but it's not a centered part of the story. They don't make it the focus. But for me, like, I can't even watch a lot of veteran shows because it's all like trauma porn. It's all like, oh yeah, they're going to war and they're shooting each other. And it's like, dude, nobody actually wants that. Like, or like, you know, I can't watch stuff about like the recovery from war because it's like, wow, I have friends that have killed themselves because they can't handle, you know, these experiences. So no, I don't want to sit here and watch an hour-long documentary about the struggle narrative of being a veteran. Like, even though it's really good that they have those, I would say they also need non-struggle narrative veteran stories, right? Like, just,
and I completely agree. Like this, that people need this. People need to hear these kind of stories. You know, you if you watch all
oh my God, yeah. Can I tell you something really cool?
Go ahead.
I remember I told you I had trauma as like a young woman with like a father who was really scary and abusive. The Marine Corps cured me of that. Like being exposed to all these loud assholes that reminded me of my dad, like desensitized. Pete, you could have like a 300-pound like huge dude get up on my face and start screaming, and I'd be like, yeah, that's a you problem, friend. Like it's helped me. It helped. I remember being screamed at. I did something wrong. I came back from deployment leave late, me and my friend, because we were dumb and stupid and messed up. I remember the gunny on like duty just screaming at us outside the barracks, and we had to like stand at parade rest. And I was like, this is a classic Marine moment. But then I felt bad because I was like, yo, he's like, I'm doing this for you Marines. And I was like, no, you're doing this because you're going through the motions, sir. You don't give a fuck about us. Like, you're not going to come by tomorrow, ask how we're doing. Like, you know, but the thing is, like, that's a grown-ass, huge Hispanic dude screaming at me. And I was like, wow, if I, you know, before the Marine Corps, I would have broke down in tears. I wouldn't have been able to function. I used to have, like, a physiological trauma reaction that, you know, the Marine Corps exposed me enough to conflict, to standing up for myself. I don't have that anymore. You know how useful that is? Doing the type of creative storytelling work I'm going to do, like being able to talk to executives and be able to say like, wow, this person and I don't have the same vision. It doesn't gel. Maybe we're not a good fit, as opposed to like being afraid of power. Like the assets I have from being a veteran are going to help me as an artist, right? Like that's crazy. That's crazy. Like,
experience.
People don't talk about that.
You know, you got to live through it to understand it better, and then to show and express it to others. And you've been through that. You've experienced it. You've learned. You've developed as a person, and I think you're going to do great.
I hope.
The world is yours. Look, if you don't try, you're never going to get it. You know, if you don't take that shot, you're never going to hit anything. So I think you'll be great. But to wrap things up, what would you like to say to all the veterans that are going to listen to this, past generations, future generations, present? What is your one message that you would like to convey to any veteran, despite the branch, service, job?
Perfect. I got the message, and this is not just for veterans. This is literally for anyone listening. We are usually our own worst critics. Even if we are arrogant and think we're the best thing ever, we still, like, we either have low self-esteem and we always, like, judge ourselves, or even if we're really arrogant, think we're the best thing ever, we still push ourselves and think like, why couldn't I do more, right? I'm better than that, right? Why? And there's that self-disappointment, right? Why couldn't I accomplish more? Be fucking kind to yourself. If you're not a sociopath and you have empathy and compassion, and you would look at your best friend, right? You're, you know, a veteran in need, and say, hey, it's okay. You know, like, you're going to be okay. Just relax and like give yourself compassion, right? If you're going to say that to your friends, don't be a hypocrite. Do that for yourself too. It's like, it's going to be okay. It's okay if you didn't work hard enough today. You got through the day, and that's exciting. Like, it's okay if you worked really hard and you still didn't accomplish something. Like, you still worked really hard, right? Like, and you'll accomplish it the next day. Just be fucking kind to yourself. You'll get more done that way.
That's great.
That's it, Alex.
All right. That wraps up our interview. Thank you so much, Sgt Gonzalez.